Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I'm your host, Stephen Pynakker, and I am really excited about this guest that I'm having on the program. About a week ago, Alan here reached out to me, I believe on Instagram, and within a few minutes we were on the phone talking to each other, and he was telling me his story, which is really an interesting story because here Alan was raised evangelical in Southern California, Thousand Oaks, California, right? And there's a lot of evangelicals out that way, by the way. There's also a lot of Mormons out there too. And it's kind of an interesting story because Alan was part of an evangelical church that was actually, he went on a mission to Utah to convert Mormons by his church, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But guess what happened, folks? Alan ended up getting baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And interestingly enough, early next year, we'll be serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Alan Arreaga, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I asked you if you were a little nervous because you never did an interview before, but we're going to do just fine on this. It's really an exciting, interesting story that you have to tell, and maybe just kind of rehash a little bit about what we talked about on the phone the other day. That here you are, raised evangelical, and first of all, like, were you born and raised in Thousand Oaks, California, or that area?
Yeah, so I'm local here. Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
so you're local,
Mhm.
and you were raised in a non-denominational evangelical Christian church. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Come from a family of pastors and everything. So
Okay, so you have family that have pastors, so people are very actively involved in the church. And we talked about this on the phone that there are some people in your family, many are not happy about this this direction that you've chosen to take in your life, and we're going to discuss that. But I just want to hear a little bit about your story. Tell us, like, what your relationship is like as an evangelical Christian. What made you decide to go to Utah to try to save Latter-day Saints? And then ultimately, what made you become one? So start from the beginning.
Yeah. So my journey of faith. So around here, like all the missionaries know my story, bits and pieces. My best friends know bits and pieces, but never the full story. Like we're gonna go in depth today. So it all started in high school, around sophomore year. We kind of had like a faith crisis, and really wanted to put my faith to the test. And so I started getting into really apologetics, and I had a lot of Latter-day Saint friends since I was part of a STEM program here in my high school. So two out of every three classes, I was with the same people, same 30 people for like three-fourths of the day, and they were all LDS basically. They're all super nice, whatever. I went to church with them somewhat. And then, after high school, they all went to BYU, served missions, so I kind of lost touch with them. So I really started investigating Mormonism and see how its roots and everything. And I watched, my favorite people would watch were Keith Walker, Bill McKeever, Sandra Tanner, all the big names. John DeLynn somewhat, but it was just depending on the day. And so then I really started reading my scriptures, and I invited every missionary over I could to my house, and just had discussions with them, had back and forth and whatever. Just try to preach what I thought was true. And so beginning of 2021, some sisters came over to my house, and we became super close. So, and they taught me for about three transfers, which is about like 5 months. And I still keep in touch with them today, and it's just such a blessing, getting to know them and stuff. And after that, since I wasn't, making progress with them, I decided that, you know what, I'm just gonna take this journey on my own, kind of like without the influence of like, the bishops or anything like that. And I decided to go to Utah with the local church here in town. And, we just killed it out there. We were baptizing returned missionaries, I had 10 baptisms. We kept like a record of everything.
Okay, so I
Uh,
want you to explain real quick. So your non-denominational church that you're a member of decided to
mhm,
send a mission team to Utah,
mhm,
and you're telling us that
mhm,
like people were getting baptized, people were leaving the LDS church, and you
mhm,
said that there. So tell us a little bit about what was the reasoning behind like doing this mission for your church. What made
mhm,
you decide to go with them? Because it sounds to me like you still have close attachments to Latter-day Saints, but you still felt the need that they needed to be saved. What was
mhm.
it like? And then, of course, I guess from my understanding, after you were there for 3 months, you were sent home because they didn't like some of the questions you were asking. So maybe just talk all
Mhm.
about that.
Okay, yeah. So I've noticed like Jehovah's Witnesses, because my uncle and aunt are Jehovah's Witness. So, they're very passionate about their belief. They're like knocking doors, Monday through Friday after work, whatever. Latter-day Saint missionaries, they're like, 80,000 of them in full force. And I noticed none of the evangelical churches had like a sect or like a ministry for apologetics. And so I talked to a local pastor here in town and I was like, hey, can we start something up? Like, I'm really familiar with Mormonism. I can teach a class. So I actually taught like my whole congregation about Mormonism because, to put it frankly, many evangelicals in my area and kind of overall aren't familiar with Mormonism at all. Kind of like, oh, the Book of Mormon, Satan's Bible, etc. Like, they're just skeptics, just um, saying non-truth things. And so we started the ministry. We got a group going. We had like 10, and then it grew to 20.
Well,
And
you know
some
what?
people
Actually,
got,
this is very interesting because I'm hearing this for the first time. So I want us to rewind the tape a little bit here. So you're
mhm,
saying that you studied Mormonism enough that they felt that you could actually teach people in your congregation. And you're just a young
mhm.
guy. You're like what, 21, 22?
I'm 22, yeah, but I was
Okay,
20
so
at the
you're
time.
like what, a teenager doing this or close to it?
Like 19, 20, yeah.
Okay. So you're actually teaching classes on what Mormons believe. Now, let me ask you, what kind of
Mhm,
materials were you using for your research because at this
mhm.
point you would be kind of probably using anti-Mormon stuff, but or just tell me what you were using. I'd be really curious.
Okay, so I don't know if you heard of Bill McKeever or Keith Walker.
Yep.
So I would like
I've
play
met Bill.
video.
I've met
Okay,
Bill.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I still talk to them here and there. Obviously not as much anymore, but
Do they know you're
when I
converting?
was no, they didn't. They didn't.
Okay.
I kind of talked with them when I was out on the mission a couple years ago, but I never talked to them since.
Okay.
But so I used to play their videos like on like the projector we had and like the little classroom we had, and just kind of go point by point. So my favorite approach in Utah was the Keith Walker's approach, the impossible gospel method. I killed it with that one. Like I just running over every Mormon I could find, at BYU, whatever. And I thought it was like the truth, right? So it was really cool, like experience, and I don't regret it now. Like obviously I learned a lot of stuff and and maybe in the person I am today. But it was the I luckily I got permission from the pastor, but they weren't really on board with it at first because they're like, oh no, it's attacking other faiths. But I was like, we're called to preach the truth, etc. So then time comes. It was like a 6-week class. I really, introduced everyone to the Book of Mormon, the church's website, how to narrow certain scriptures down in the Book of Mormon, certain prophets talk, so like about tithing, etc. Um, but my main approach was what did Jesus actually teach, right? Like what did like eternal marriage was never taught, all these other things. And so that was my main approach to Latter-day Saints, kind of doubting their testimony in the church. And anyway, so after 6 weeks are done, we packed up, we packed our bags to Utah mid-April, like around general conference time. And over there is a whole different culture. Like for me, it was my first time out there, like out in like Provo area, because I've been to Utah, but to Zion and southern Utah for like family vacations, etc. And it was just such a shock. Like there was no alcohol, liquor stores, like nothing. And some of the people from the group like drank a bit, so it was kind of a hard time for them. But other than that, it was like the mission was about 6 months. I was sent home the third month. And ever since then, I kind of lost touch with everybody since obviously I converted and stuff.
So,
Um,
so I just first of all, this Keith Walker guy, I'm not too familiar with him. Who's Keith Walker? Somebody I look up on YouTube. Looks like he's a
uh,
fundamentalist, like a pretty ultra fundamentalist Christian, King James only type kind of guy, or am I looking?
kind of, yeah, yeah. Are you looking at the right one? He has like glasses, kind of shaggy hair.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Okay, so you used his materials
Yeah,
and
he's with Evidence Ministries. That's his ministry, Evidence Ministries. I'm not
Evan.
sure if it's still active, but
So like is that him right
yeah,
there?
that's him. That's him. Yeah, 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 right
Okay.
there.
Mormonism's impossible gospel.
Mm,
Okay, interesting. I don't know if he ever got on my radar screen, to be perfectly honest with you. Fascinating. So just real
oh,
quick, so you actually kind of helped organize this mission, but then you were supposed to be there for 6 months, but they sent you home after 3 months.
mhm,
What was it?
mhm.
What was that like, dude? And that must have been like, here you are, like I mean, the walk of shame, or how did you feel about all this?
Honestly, it was probably like the happiest, saddest moment of my life so far. Just because, after high school, you can kind of do your own thing, right? You can choose the college route or work, whatever. So I wasn't working at the time, and I was kind of working for the church a bit, just like on the ministry team, and I was getting paid like, not that much, but it was enough to like make a living and stuff. And, it was one of the happiest, saddest moments of my life because during that time, like I still kept in touch with my the sisters who taught me who went home and stuff. So like they obviously some of them got married and whatever, so we kept in touch every now and then. And I didn't tell anyone any of them about this mission trip because obviously most of them live in Utah, right? So I didn't want to like, break that friendship or trust or anything. So I kind of kept it on the down low. And then um, when it was funny because the night before, like the couple nights leading up to it, I just had a feeling I was gonna get sent home and caught because like, we would go out and preach to the streets like BYU campus, the NL tracks in downtown Provo, etc., like Apologia does. So we would team up with like Apologia here and there. I met some of the guys and but never really congregated with them just because they're super Calvinist and their approach wasn't the best approach. Like everyone on the mission team had their unique approach. Some had like, oh, attack Joseph Smith. Mine was, asking questions. Other people were like, oh, polygamy and all this other stuff like celestial and all that. So it was such a unique team, and luckily, like I was kind of like we kept like a leaderboard. It was kind of funny, like of who had the most baptisms, and at the I was kind of top leader, top dog, and when I got sent home, it was honestly I started crying on the flight home. I was like, there's no way, like, what am I doing?
what was the breaking point here that would have caused them if you're leading the team in baptisms and you're
Mhm.
doing all this work and they cut your mission short by 3 months? What really was the main thing that caused this to happen? Because that's astonishing to me.
So basically, I was on the outside. It looked like I was, top dog, the leader. But on the inside, I was like, all the things that the sisters taught me, all the things that, other missionaries have taught me were like making sense to me in a way. But I didn't want to admit it, because obviously, I'm here attacking the faith in a way. And so every like the last month and a half, um, I would go to the Jordan River Temple and go pray there like every night, just pray for revelation, see if like what I'm doing is the correct way to follow. And then I'm during, people go to the temple often, carry their bags and whatever, Monday nights, Tuesday nights. So Friday nights, the same group of people went. So I used to congregate with them and go out to dinner with them. And, now they're some of my best friends and keep in touch here and there. And, they would help me understand it. They would actually defend Mormonism from the Bible, which helped me out a bunch.
Mhm.
And so, one night I was like congregating with them and they're like, hey, like there's an open house next year. We'd love for you to come out and whatever. And we were all just kind of like doing like praying, but in like a circle, like anyone would like praying in a circle outside the temple. And I turned my phone off because I didn't want my mission president, tracking my location or anything. And luckily, somehow they find me. They found me, and my mission president just like just throws me a new one, just starts yelling at me in front of everybody. It was like really bad. Got into an argument. And he's like, "What are you doing?" Because he's more of like a King James only guy,
Okay.
kind of like it's evangelical or nothing, and everything else is a cult. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
so this church you went to was a King James only group?
yeah, yeah, they weren't officially, but they were we read from the King James and stuff. But I
Okay.
use my New Living. I still use my New Living Testament or New Living, yeah, New Living Translation version of the Bible. That's just easier to read.
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah, but yeah, it was like it got really ugly really fast, and so then as tension calmed down, he took me because we stayed at a huge Airbnb. And so he's like, hey man, like, we discussed with all the other elders and stuff like that you're gonna be sent home tomorrow morning and here's your plane ticket. And I was like, dang, like how did that happen? Like what's going on? And so I was just like, I didn't know what to say. I didn't like show any emotion. I was like, okay, whatever, like. And so then next morning, like around 8 a.m., he drops me off at the airport and my buddy of mine comes to me, he's like, good luck, man, on your journey, but you ain't built for this team. And that just broke me, honestly. I was like, dang, like, you're just gonna turn your back on me? Like, I wasn't even showing full support for the LDS church at the time. I was just kind of interested, like, being more open-minded, if that makes sense.
Just showing anything that deviates from the
Mhm.
party line, if you will, showing that you're an individual who's thinking for themselves. And it
Mhm.
shows that there's a lot of groupthink going on with the group that you were with. Also, then you have the
Mhm.
I would call it the toxicity of
Mm-hmm.
being exposed to apologia and the way they do their work, which is not something I support at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's that if you're working with apologia, then that tells me a lot about the mindset of this group,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
one, I already have all the answers, and they're wrong and we're right.
Mm-hmm.
And I will also, and I've mentioned this in other forums, and I've mentioned this to other Christian leaders in Utah. I say, there, it's so funny. You have this organization, and I've met Bill McKeever, nice enough
Mm-hmm.
guy, and
Yeah.
but I've had some dealings with some of his underlings, and
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been too pleased with their, I would say, lack of Christian charity and how they approach me. But what I find so
Mm-hmm.
fascinating is that you have this organization called Mormon Research Ministry, right? It's what's called Mormon Research Ministry.
Yeah.
But yet, I don't see him at the Mormon History Association. I don't see him at John Whitmer Historical Association, which, by the way, just last month, I gave a presentation to the John Whitmer Historical Association. So I'm actually doing research, um, and actually am contributing to the scholarly world even as a layperson, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have Mormon Research Ministry, but I don't see any research because you know what? They already have all the answers. And
Uh-huh.
you
Uh-huh.
and so to me, they would be so much better off if they were actually to engage the academics. If your research is
Mm-hmm.
in your name, then why aren't you engaging the academic community? Like Christopher Thomas, author of the Pentecostal Reads the Book of Mormon, was just until
Mm-hmm.
recently the president of the Book of Mormon Studies Association. Okay, or
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Kyle Bashirs, who is attended a Southern Baptist seminary as a pastor at a non-denominational church in Mobile, Alabama, and he's one of the leading scholars, Mormon scholars of the James Strang. And this
Mm-hmm.
is an example of, and then we got David Boyce of 52 Churches, who's doing a similar thing. He also gave a
Mm-hmm.
presentation at John Whitmer. And to me, it's like we're actually having a two-way conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas Mormon Research Ministry, Apologia Studios, it's all one way or our way or no or bust, right? That's how they operate. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of that black and white mentality that you were in and
Mm-hmm.
engaged with. So do you agree is that a fairly fair assessment?
Exactly, yeah. So my favorite person on the mission was probably James White and Keith Walker. As you've seen James White's Street Apologia and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So that was kind of like,
Did
you
you
know, I
actually
let
did you actually
uh
interact with both of them yourself?
not in person, never in
Okay.
person. But just like, through YouTube and stuff, like
Right.
never through like Zoom, but just like watching their videos, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like for me at the time, it's such a blessing like listening to these scholars of like, religion and all this stuff. And um sometimes like, I still kind of go and listen to the talks, like especially like on Catholicism and etc. Because now like James White is really big into Islam. I don't know if you've heard, but it's really big into that like apologetics now. So, but yeah, like those are the people like, I kind of like was trained on, how to like approach Mormons, how to approach this, how to
Right.
approach that, how to because if you tell an LDS person, oh, Joseph Smith had 34 wives, that's gonna like you're gonna run, to me that doesn't affect me, and to anyone else, like, oh, okay, whatever. For my approach, it was kind of like, okay, like look at what your prophets have said, look at what like there's no grace in this gospel, you know what I mean? Like kind of just attacking, using their own sources to attack their own faith. That would, because if you tell, an LDS person, oh, read this talk from Keith Walker or any other scholar, they're never gonna listen to it,
No, absolutely not.
So,
No, and
so
James
that.
White, I put in the same boat. Matter of fact, I've called out James White by name on Mormon Stories, calling him out as well as Apologia Studios. I'm on record as being a critic of these ministries, so-called
Mhm.
ministries. I don't know how much ministry they're actually doing. I think
Mhm.
they're really poisoning the well. I don't feel like they're very Christ-like in the way they approach these things. Honestly, I think they have some views that are truly reprehensible and vile, and
Mhm.
highly unfortunate that many Latter-day Saints are
Mhm.
exposed to evangelical Christianity via the likes of these people. And to be
Mhm.
honest with you, that's the main reason why the ex-Mormon Reddit is full of atheists. Why? Because these
Mhm.
people, when they were LDS, went to general conference or went to temple openings, and you had these yahoos holding signs out, yelling and screaming, they're going to hell outside. And a Mormon would be like, if I ever were to leave the church, I would certainly not join them. So
Exactly.
anything
Exactly.
these groups, what they've done is they've actually made it really easy for Latter-day Saints to bypass evangelicalism altogether and go right into atheism, which I think is unfortunate because it's really poisoning the well. That's why I'm trying to undo a lot of the damage that's been done between our camps. As Jeff
Hmm.
McCall is doing the same thing, and
Hmm.
other people that I just mentioned. We have 200-year history of being at war with the Restoration, the evangelical community. And I tell people this too, Alan. I
Hmm.
say one of the places you could say that Mormonism was birthed, the beginning of Mormonism started, was at Alvin's funeral, when that Presbyterian pastor said that Alvin Smith is burning in hell. And honestly, I think that's part of the reason why that's one of the starting points of Mormonism. When young Joseph Smith heard that, that devastated him. And I
Hmm.
think that helped birth Mormonism. So I'm sorry I didn't mean to talk so long, but I just wanted to give some
Oh, you're
context.
good. You're good. Yeah.
And so here you are, you're actually being taught by these people. They're actually mentoring you.
Hmm.
But then at the same
Hmm.
time, when you were younger, you were also exposed and had many friends from Latter-day Saints. Now, the question I have for you is,
Hmm.
you get sent home, you have all these questions. Now, what happens next in your journey?
So next, I come home, and then I kind of start working again, whatever, and just living the normal life, working, not really going to church, any church at that time, because obviously I couldn't go back to my original church. And so I explored a few evangelical churches in the area, but there was never really a sense of community. You know what I mean? It was kind of more like, the lights are turned off. It's like a rock and roll show. It's just like, the guitars at full blast, the projectors, And out here in California, at least in my area, we have a couple churches that are really big in the area, or at least like, growing to be mega churches now as we speak. And there's not really, I mean, in my opinion, at least around here, and I feel like as a whole evangelical, there's not really focus on preaching the word, as they say. The book of Matthew commands us to go out to preach to the nations in every tongue and language, etc. And so there was never like, at the other church I was attending at the time, I tried starting a ministry there, like maybe not on Mormonism, but just on anything, like, just dialoguing, if that makes sense, like interfaith groups. The pastor was like, nah, it's not for us. And then, I tried another church, same thing. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna give this like, I explored Islam for a bit, honestly. There's a mosque like 5 minutes from my house. Really nice people. They have a lot of similarities to Latter-day Saint beliefs. So I got connected with the imam there, and we had dinner and whatever. But that was it, because then they started pushing it on me, and I was like, nah. And then like, Islam is like, I feel like it's the same thing with Mormonism. It's very misinterpreted. Everything that, oh, every Muslim's a terrorist or whatever. Like, that's not true, right? I know very Muslim people that are wonderful people and still keep in touch with today.
I'm in touch
So,
with Muhammad in Gaza Strip right now. Now, I haven't heard from him from
mhm,
the last few days. I'm afraid I may have lost touch with him because of the internet connectivity that's
uh-huh,
going on. But as soon as I hear from Muhammad, folks, I will give you an update. He lives in Gaza Strip, and he's a Muslim philosopher and writer and historian. And it's so fascinating because he attended Christian schools, and he was breastfed as an infant by a Christian woman. So this man has a real intimate connection to Christianity, but he is a Muslim. Um,
mhm,
so yeah, there's a lot more to Islam than meets the eye, and I think
mhm,
we do need to honor the aspects of Islam that is good and is peaceful
mhm,
as well. And I
mhm,
appreciate you actually taking the time to actually have dinner with an imam and really show
mhm,
interest that way. I think that tells me a lot about where your heart is. Um,
mhm.
that's actually that's and you know what? This is the other thing too, Alan. Interfaith is hard.
It
Interfaith.
is.
And so I think what you're doing, I think you have the same spirit that I do. And so I understand, I'm look, have I gone to you at all and said, Alan, you're making a big mistake. I don't think you should join. Have I said anything like that to you?
No, no.
Okay. Don't go on that mission, Alan. You're gonna and don't they're gonna do those satanic rites in the temple, all that kind of God makers nonsense, right? Which by the
Oh
way,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
so okay, so actually wow. So let's continue the story. You're
Okay,
talking
yeah.
to this imam. You're on this faith journey. You're not really going to a church, or you're kind of and you know what, your description of mega churches, by the way, very apt. I really appreciate what you're saying. I think you had your bullseye on that one. So folks, remember this is an implication on the evangelical church as much as anything. I think this is really important that we get through with this as well. So now, what made you? What was that moment?
Mhm,
That moment where you what had a testimony of the Book of Mormon, the
mhm.
church, Joseph Smith? What happened?
Okay, so then after the whole Muslim phase, because I didn't go to any of their services because they have like they still do have open houses, but they're on Sundays, so hardly anyone goes, so I was kind of the one and only guy and a couple other um members, friends of the mosque, so they showed up and they're really interested. And so, I would go to their community events, etc. But I kept it very low key since it was near the meeting house, LDS meeting house, because it's like right down the street from each other. So I would tell my dad, hey, I'm going with my friends to play basketball at the meeting house or the chapel. And then I would go swing by, like I would park my car there so he would know I'm there, and then go to the Muslim mosque and dialogue with them a bit.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you heard of Sheikh Uthman. He's a YouTuber.
Not
Okay,
off.
so he's from San Diego. He does street apologetics, but he's very, I don't know if he hates Christians, but he's like his way is like apologia, but Muslim, Muslim
Oh,
apologia, I'll put it that way.
okay, got
So
it.
he like dismantles the Trinity, the contradictions in the Bible. All like it's not really a loving approach of if you want to convert to Islam, I wouldn't convert if he's telling me about it,
Okay, got it.
So I watched his stuff and it was pretty cool, like pretty interesting. I actually got lunch with him one day and his team, and they were pretty cool.
Hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, you want to do a shahada, which is like a confession of faith in the Muslim religion?" And I was like, "Oh no, not right now. I still need more info because like it's the Islam religion is so complex. It's like so much to learn, and I felt that wasn't the path I needed to go and stuff. So fast forward, that was like summer, July, and August, like end of August, I started, I reached out to sister missionaries. I had some friends from Utah come visit the mission. And so I was like, hey, like, I tried contacting the sisters, but they didn't reach out to me. And turns out they got a new number. So I had to get the new number and I got in contact with them. But I was still struggling a lot. Like this was just last year, just August last
Right.
year. So I was still struggling, I was still believed in the Trinity. I still believed in the Bible alone. The certain heaven and hell I still believed in, And so I was struggling a lot, like the first couple lessons, like I wanted to make the journey back and, really commit to baptism, but I was like really, really struggling. And they like helped me all the way. So then around September, they did the invitation, read the Book of Mormon and pray about it. And, the same feelings came back. I was very against praying about it. I wasn't going to pray about it because, just I'm going to be like the Bereans and in the New Testament where they studied the scriptures and see if it was true for themselves. So that's what I did. And I kind of compared the Book of Mormon and the Bible. And I was like, you know what? This Book of Mormon thing talks about Jesus Christ and it goes really in depth. And, it's really, third Nephi when Jesus comes to the Americas and, preaches to natives. And, then one night I was like, you know what? Because I'm home alone a lot now. It's just my dad and he works a bunch and stuff. So I took the Book of Mormon. I laid it next to my Bible in my room and in my bedroom. And it was kind of like, sunset was setting. It was like the perfect timing. And I was just like, I just asked God, I was just like, God, if this is the way you want me to pursue, lead me your way and God, help me, like, bring your people to me, if that makes sense. And so I prayed about it, and I just felt like a rush of like peace. Like, it's undescribable, honestly, but I guess I can describe it as peace and comfort. Then that's how I gain a testimony of it. And I've been reading it bits in here, especially now that I'm preparing to go on a mission. But from that was in September, so then I told the sisters, I'm like, hey, let's set a start date for December 18th, since obviously Christmas was on a Monday, so that would work out perfectly. And so we're like, all right, we set a date, and then we continued on with the lessons, and they answered like literally every question I had. And December 18th came around and it was very special. All the sisters who taught me came in for my baptism. So that was really, really special. Two of my best friends came and it was just such a special journey because those two sisters who played a vital role in my conversion, Ashley and Tatiana, I still remain in contact with them today, and it was so special having them there and a few others. And it was kind of funny because at my baptism, like it was after second hour, so it was like 3 hours of church basically. And I wasn't going to church that often just because I had work Sundays and stuff, so I couldn't make it to almost any service. So that was like the first Sunday in like 2 years I could make it. So that was pretty funny. And at my baptism, it was kind of funny because normally you do baptisms in baptismal font, like in the little room instead of the chapel. So then we set up the chairs, whatever, and then the bishop comes over. He's like, "Hey, man, like, we're gonna have to move locations." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, there's too many people, so we're gonna have to set up the font and put up all the chairs back, and we're gonna have the ceremony. Um, and we're gonna have the baptism in the baptismal font, and then the ceremony in the chapel." And it was crazy because I never expected anyone to come. I just expected
Oh,
the
so you had
two.
a bunch of your Latter-day Saint friends come to see you get baptized? Is that
Yeah.
oh,
And plus the people in the chapel, like
right?
that I'm now friends with, obviously. It was just so special because like I look back, I remember this vividly. I remember I was looking next to my friend Tatiana after I came out of the baptism and changed and whatever. And I look back and just like a flood of people, like, and she's like, they're all here to support you.
Oh,
And I was like, wow, I just started like getting emotional. I was like,
oh.
who would ever thought, I would be here, yet alone. And then I shared my testimony, and my best friend Ashley shared her talk, and it was really special having them there, and still having that friendship now to this day, and continue on.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So it was probably right about the same time David Alexander got baptized into the
Hmm.
church is about the same time you got baptized. So I find that to be interesting. You guys kind of have
Hmm.
parallel stories almost happening right around the same time. He, of course,
Hmm.
was baptized into the church via the work that Sister Missionary was doing
Hmm.
with him.
Hmm.
Interesting parallel there. And of
Hmm.
course, he's somebody who is many of you, of course, are familiar with, who are viewers of my program. There's a lot of overlap between our audiences, as you might imagine.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you a few questions, just kind of like as an outsider who would be like, okay, first of all, you've told me that your parents are going through a divorce, that you've
Hmm.
had
Hmm.
some emotional issues, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
tumultuous things happening in your life. And so
Hmm.
frequently when people those kind of things happen to people, they do something like this, like they feel like they haven't they don't have a sense of self, that they feel detached and untethered, and
Hmm.
that their life is out of control. There's tumultuous things happening. There's a divorce happening in your family, and
Hmm.
that's often the times when people are at their weakest. You even and then you're devastated because you're sent home early from your mission to the Mormons in Utah. Isn't that crazy?
Uh-huh.
Could one make a psychological profile of somebody that really was kind of ripe to be baptized into the church? I mean, can you see how somebody would look at it like, well, you're kind of being taken
Hmm.
advantage of? I'm not saying that you are, but maybe some people would
Hmm.
look at it that way. Maybe talk about that.
Okay, for sure. Yeah. So, one of the main reasons I converted was because, like David explained it perfectly. In evangelical Christianity, there's a big like Jesus movement, and nothing wrong with that. But I felt there was no emphasis on community and the gospel-centered home, and just building a foundation on Christ. At least in my experience, I can't speak for others. And mainly like at least one of the main problems I had with the Christian or evangelical churches, were the doctrines. Like no one could ever explain me the Trinity. Like it was just so confuses,
Okay.
when people would, explain it to me, pastors after pastor,
Right.
and after watching, after hanging out with, Muslims, they're pros at taking it down. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll just dismantle piece by piece, just taking it
Okay.
down. And then, just the contradictions in the Bible. And there was just a lot of things like adding up doctrine wise that I didn't agree with. That the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had an opening, because I had many friends who sadly passed away because of drug overdoses in high school or car crashes, whatever. They never, they knew Jesus, like they had they kind of went to church, kind of didn't. But, I was taught being raised that, if you don't accept Jesus into your heart, you're going to hell.
Right.
So I didn't want that for them. Why would a loving God send someone to hell? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, in a sense, yes, it was community, but it was 90% doctrine because
Mm.
I've come to notice that if you go to church for people, it's gonna fail you every time. You got to go to church for God and not for the people.
Mm.
Because nobody's perfect. you know.
That's true.
And
Yeah, I see that.
yeah, and the second you walk, let's say you find a perfect church and you walk into it, it's not perfect anymore, you know?
Right, exactly. I say the same thing.
So
That's why I tell people that's why I'll never join a church. I'll ruin it. So I, and you had even said like, okay, for instance, was you watched the God Makers cartoon, you watched the New Name Noah's temple ceremony stuff that he posted
Mhm,
on there. You've been exposed to all the information that's out there, all the
mhm.
anti-Mormon literature,
Mhm,
all the criticisms. I mean, you've seen it all. And
mhm.
despite all of that, and this is what's so fascinating. I talked to the missionaries. Many of them have watched the God Makers videos. Many of them have seen a lot of this stuff too as kids. You know, a lot of them look, even Gustafov, he was 15 years old. He's watching all this stuff, you know, that I was telling you
Mhm,
about, get you on his program. So the information is already out there.
mhm,
And that's what
mhm.
makes it remarkable is that despite all of that stuff that you were exposed to, and even having a ministry to save Latter-day Saints and get them out of that church, now you are about to go, you've been baptized into that church less than a year
Mhm,
ago. And then
mhm,
early next year, you are going to be serving a mission.
mhm.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It is.
You
Who would have
sometimes have
ever
to
thought I
pinch
would be
yourself.
here?
How do
Yeah.
you process all that?
Honestly, like like I got ordained in Melchizedek priesthood 2 weeks ago, or no, sorry, last week. And like my bishop said in front of elders quorum, you're on a speed train, man. And I'm just planning on staying on this speed train, full on mission, and even after, because I've noticed like a lot of Latter-day Saints, at least in my opinion, they kind of stop sharing the gospel after the mission. Kind of like, oh, 2 years is up, that's it. My main focus is, especially after my mission, to probably start a ministry defending Mormonism from the Bible. There's another channel. I don't know if you heard of her. Her name is Sharon. Sharon Seeking Jesus. I don't know if you heard of her.
It rings a bell.
Okay, okay. So I think she converted too, and then she has a wonderful video defending Mormonism from the Bible
Hmm.
and biblical evidence. So you got to check it. I'll send it to you after. But
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's a wonderful. That really helped me a lot because going in like the first couple months, like it was all about community, whatever. Um, And I just love I just love being, going to church whenever I can and, just being a servant, because, it's all about service in the church, just, fulfilling your calling, etc. But it's been truly a joy. And I think a mission would be a good, kind of getaway for me from all the chaos at home. Like obviously it's not going to go away, it's still going to be there, but I feel it's going to help me grow as a person. And every person I talk to that's left the church, they never regret serving the mission. Yeah, they might
That's
not
true.
believe it, but it shapes you as a person. And they
No,
become
actually,
wonderful salespeople after.
yep. No, that is actually true. And even John DeLynn of Mormon Stories, he
Mhm,
credits his mission to really helping make him the man that he is today. That it really taught him the ways of the world, and it really was helpful. So there's a lot of good skills that you can learn on the mission. And that's the other thing
mhm,
too is I have the missionaries come here quite frequently, every few weeks or
uh-huh,
so. And then
uh-huh.
when the new pair come in, one of the first places they come here, and I give them pizza, and my mom and I treat them well. Uh, Folks, if you encounter missionaries, make sure you feed them. They need food, okay?
Uh-huh.
But they're really wonderful dudes. We really appreciate them. As a matter of fact, they've come and visited the church here briefly for one of the services. I think it's really important that we have this kind of dialogue and this kind of conversation. And like I said, folks, you heard it from Alan. I have not gone to him. There's not this secret agenda, Steve Pynakker, that secretly is trying to not get people to join the church, because I understand the appeal.
Mhm,
I actually talked to David Snell about this. I have a friend who I've had on as a guest, and I
mhm,
was having lunch with him, and I told him, I said, I would not be in favor of you. I mean, he's Baptist, and he said, I wouldn't be in favor of you converting, because he said that he was close to considering it. There's some certain advantages to him converting. I said, I wouldn't encourage you to do it, but I would totally understand why you would. And I get why you have taken this journey, because
mhm, mhm,
I can see, first of all, the criticisms of the evangelical church are very valid. I think that a lot of the politics and garbage that you have to deal with, the politics that you have to deal with these pastors and their egos
mhm,
and ministry and all this kind of stuff, I see it all the time. It just gets really old and taxing, and honestly, it can really hurt your faith. But then also the
hmm
idea of like having like a gospel centered home, as you had called it, also having a sense of community. These are all
hmm
great attributes that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints does have. So I can see
hmm
the appeal for you, especially at this point in your life. It's giving you some stability. It's giving you a sense of purpose. I get it, dude. What do you say to that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Because honestly, like you said, like, Mormonism saved my life too. Honestly, like, first, like, even though I was very skeptical, and very like kind of bashy towards the sisters and everything, like I said earlier, like I was with a pair of sisters for like 3 transfers, which is like 5 months almost, and they would always say like, you're gonna get baptized, you're gonna get baptized, we're trusting God on this one. I was like, nah, that's not for me. I'm here to convert you. Because in the back of my head, that was my mission. I even told
Oh,
them, I
okay.
was straight up with them towards the end. I was like after their mission, I was like, hey, that was my goal to convert you and come to knowledge of the true gospel.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so that was my goal. That would have been like, a highlight of the year, but it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, no,
yeah.
your story is not an easy story. It's a complex story. You still have doubts. You still aren't sure if you 100% agree with every single doctrine that the church teaches. You're still evolving in that area, as you've told me, but you're growing in that area too. Now, this is the thing, evangelicals, I know this is an uncomfortable conversation for you, and you're probably saying, Steve, why aren't you telling Alan to not do this? And I say, well, you know what? Um, this is the faith journey he's on. And I do believe that God does play a role in people's lives. And I also tell people, I said, if man couldn't plan it, then God probably did. In other words, I really feel that God does things outside of the box, out beyond anything that we could comprehend or understand. So for you in the flesh, in the natural, might be judging this, I will tell you that there's something beyond that as well. There is also the spiritual element, and you don't know where what God's plan is with something like this. So I'm not going to go after Alan and say not to do it, because I don't think that's my place to do that. I look, him and I we talked on the phone the other day. I asked him about this and that. I asked you pointed questions, and you gave me
Mhm.
good answers. And some of the things like, yeah, I'm not really sure about that. That's fair. But the last thing I'm going to do is try to have somebody's faith created in my image of what faith should be. I think it's I and what I think it should be. I want that person, that the faith journey is everybody's individual faith journey is their own, and I think we need to honor and respect that, and just try not to be a jerk. Please be nice to people like Alan, and listen to him and hear his story, and pray for Alan. Alan, I'll be praying for you, and I love you, brother.
Thank you. Same to you.
So I really appreciate you taking the time doing this today. Was there anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap this up?
Yeah, just a couple more things. It's kind of funny because since the mission, obviously, I kind of kept it low key for a bit, and right now, as the family knows and stuff, I don't think it's hit them yet. I think once I leave, it'll hit them. But just receiving all these criticisms, like honestly, it makes me stronger. I don't know about my other friends, but for me, it makes me a stronger person. One of my best friends who's an evangelical. We went out to Cheesecake. I don't know if you heard of Cheesecake Factory. It's a restaurant. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we had a wonderful dinner and everything. And he was like, yeah, just asking me all these questions, pulling like, John DeLynn on me, all this stuff. And I'm just like, hey man, like, you know, this is my journey. And like you said, you can't put, your faith in my faith because I mean, sometimes I go visit his church every now and then, just depends on the day. Um, and I just tell him like, you can't judge, like it's my journey and you have your own journey and you can't be doing this because he's like, oh, you're gonna be like the Wilder family. I don't know if you heard of them.
Oh yeah, the
Uh
Wilders. I know the Wilders very well.
okay.
Lynn, yeah,
Mhm.
Lynn. She doesn't. Her and I. Yeah, we. They all know me. They all know me very well. Yep.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's like, oh, I have hope in you that you're gonna be like this great pastor after and stuff. And since I'm still the kind of like, trying to plan out my life with like, because I'm gonna be 24 when I come back.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to figure out that avenue of life. He's like, hey, just start that now. Don't go on a mission. I'm just saying, hey, man, like, school's always gonna be there. It's not the end of the world if I start. The greats of I'm really into business, so the great like KFC guy, 75, you know? So it's like, it's the journey never stops. Like I feel like society puts a big, bubble around, okay, you have to be married by this age, or even, stereotypes in the church, get married by 21,
Right.
And for me, like I don't really agree with getting married young.
No,
I
I
know it's
agree.
not church doctrine, but
Mhm.
I feel like once I come home, especially since I'm older and more mature, I'll be ready then. I'm still a kid, I'm
Yeah.
a kid at heart,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. I don't think you should get married till you're at least 25, 30, probably would
mhm,
be better. Tell you what, when you get married after you're 30, the divorce rate goes way, way down because you found yourself, you figured yourself, your brains
mhm,
is fully developed. Most brains aren't developed until at least age 25. So you're still not fully mature until your mid
mhm.
20s. So I think, yeah, you serving a 2-year mission, coming back when you're age 24, I think that you come back with a much better perspective. Like one of the first missionaries I engaged, man, he he he's a really cool dude, but within a few weeks of him serving his mission, he's getting married right from his mission, man. He's like 21 years old. It's like, man, you really are just a kid when you're in your early 20s. So I
Mhm.
think that shows a certain degree of maturity for you to recognize that as well. I'm not telling people how to live their lives. I'm just giving you my wisdom that I've learned in my life as well. Anything else, Alan? Oh, and by the way, so your parents, by the way, your dad is not crazy
Mhm.
about what you're doing, and you had told me that your mom won't even talk to you because of this. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we've been keeping in touch here and there now more often, but the mission I sprinkled like briefly, but since we're going through the divorce, I don't really want to mention it and her go crazy and us
Yeah,
end up homeless. You know what I mean? So,
right. So just
um,
yeah, you got to do what you got to do to stay safe and protect yourself. And then what you need to do is, yeah, if you feel that going on that mission may be something that could be very important to you, then I would
mhm,
say that yeah, that's probably wise to do because again, this is a minefield we're walking in. I recognize the fact that I'm an evangelical Christian who's counseling this young man who was an evangelical and now has converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and
mhm.
now is about to go on a mission. This is about the only place that this conversation could be had anywhere is on this channel because this is truly a unique, safe space for all the different perspectives and voices. And Alan, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Thank you, appreciate it, and thank you for reaching back too.
Yeah,
Because I reached out to other shows, but I fell through with Cardin and Ward Radio and all them. So I was really hoping to get on with them because they're here around town. So but hopefully they can see it or something.
yeah. Well, now that you're on my program, you're going to be in the you'll be in the conversation now, and so you'll get noticed by other people, and I'll get you booked on a couple other places. I'll try to put a good word. I'll send a link to this interview to David Snell of
Okay, for sure, yeah.
and then I'll send also I'll send some information to Gustavov so you could go on his program. He was recently a guest on Hello Saints as well. He does a Spanish language channel, which I've been on, but it takes a lot of work for him to do subtitles. But you're conversant in Spanish, so you'll be able to actually have a conversation with him where he doesn't have to do a lot of editing. So I'm sure he'll book you just like that.
Oh
So either way,
yeah,
well, Alan, welcome to the Mormon YouTube world now. You're now part of
yeah.
the conversation. And I want to thank you for so much for coming on the program today.
Thank you, appreciate it, appreciate it.
So just to remember, oh, by the way, your word of wisdom, were you ever a coffee drinker?
No, I wasn't
Oh,
actually. Funny story, like the coffee and hot drinks, like that wasn't a problem for me converting. Just because I mean, every time I drink coffee, like my stomach just doesn't take
so
it well.
didn't agree. What about
So,
drinking alcohol or beer? Did you ever drink beer or wine or anything?
no, I never drank or smoked, thankfully. I was around that crowd because, like a lot of evangelical friends, like, were like, kind of doing the whole party scene during high
Yeah,
school. So I was always around that crowd, but never, never did any of that. Like I was always like, what's it called? Like the sober driver, like,
sure.
just, yeah,
Straight
so,
edge, silver driver.
yeah.
Well, then, of course, in your case, this would be a hot chocolate mug that we have at our store, mormonbookreviews.com. We also have links in the description for those of you who'd like to financially support the channel as well. And I want to thank those who are contributing to the channel. I'd like to hear your comments, folks. I know I'm probably going to get some flack from some evangelicals, but I really honestly want you to really think long and hard before you criticize Alan and before you criticize me. Um, Pray before. If you're upset at what I'm saying, Alan, I want you to pray before you post something. Okay, that's all I'm asking you to do, because I think it's really important that we have a civil discourse here. I get attacked frequently by, not too frequently, but occasionally by some of these people from the apologia. People come kind of from that camp, and I don't see any of Christ-like attributes in any of their words, sayings, or deeds that I do. I don't see Christ at all, zero. And so to me, like they said, you'll know them by their fruits. But this really is the most important thing is this, folks. Remember, all the voices of the restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.